أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أرواحنا له فداء. أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لقد أرسلنا رسلنا بالبينات وأنزلنا معهم الكتاب والميزان ليقوم الناس بالقسط. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in Surah Al-Hadid that surely we have sent our messengers with clear signs or clear explanations, al-bayinat, and we have sent with them the book and the scale, or as it's translated at times, the book and justice, al-mizan, meaning justice. لِيَقُومَ النَّاسِ بِالْقِسْطِ, so that mankind may establish justice. This verse, which is verse 25 in Surah Al-Hadid, it speaks directly to social activism, speaks directly to the mission of all of the prophets sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to mankind. And as we know the history of the prophets, also the history of the Imams, alayhim wasalam, is that they were active within the society. And their mission was, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states that they brought forth clear explanation, they brought forth wisdom, that wisdom which is founded upon the wahi, or the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is a book. And in that book was the scale of justice, to show that what is right, what is wrong, what is just, what is oppressive. And they presented this to mankind so that they may establish justice among themselves. Within the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he speaks about mankind and society, just society in general. He says, لَوْ عُدِلُوا لَأَسْتَغْنُوا, that if man was just, if justice prevailed within a society, then that would be sufficient for a society. That you would not, you would not have to police people. Why? Because if everyone observed justice, observed the rights of one another, then there's no need for a police coming to trying to capture those who are committing crimes, those who are being unjust, those who are infringing on others' rights. There will be no need to take another person to court. Why? Because they would know what justice is. They know what the rights of others are. They know what their rights are, and they will abide by that. But because that deficiency exists within society, it exists in the treatment of one person to another, then you need individuals like the prophets, like the imams, who stand up for justice, who stand up for righteousness, who remind others about justice. So the concept of social justice within Islam stems forth from this, from that mission of the prophets. And that is the same mission that our Imams, alayhim salatu wasalam, that they also carried out. And in this particular month that we're in, which is Muharram, al-Haram, the sacred month of Muharram, we are reminded of that mission, that prophetic mission. Because Imam Hussein's mission was no different than the prophetic mission, and that was to establish justice, to remind people of justice. And in Imam Hussein's case, in order to establish justice and remind people of justice, he had to rise up against the tyrant of his time. Nonetheless, and not on any lesser scale, all of our Imams, alayhim afsalatu wassalam, they advocated justice, they were active within the society, they were part of the, you could say, if this is the right term, they were social activists, meaning that they advocated justice, they brought awareness to mankind about what is right, about what is wrong. However, when we look at their methods, and this is very important, the methods of the Imams, when we look at their method was different. Some of them, at time, if it was possible, they rose to the status of the Khalifa and they ran the government. Although, as we believe that they should have been in that position in the first place, but because their rights were usurped, then eventually they took that position as the Khalifa. I'm speaking directly about Imam Ali. And you'll see his life even before he had the Khilafah, before he was Khalifa, and in a position, and his activism even after he became the ruler. At times the Imams, they had to make peace. Imam Hassan. At times there needed to be revolution. Imam Hussein. At times there needed to be an indirect method of teaching. And we see that in Imam Ali Zain al-Abidin, because he taught through his dua, he taught through the Risalat al-Hukuk, as I've been mentioning in this blessed month, the sacred month of Muharram. At times there needed to be the establishments of institutions of learning. And we see this in the case of Imam Muhammad Baqir, in the case of Imam Jafar as-Sadiq, alayhi salatu wasalam. At times we see that based on the conditions of the times, the circumstances of the time, that the Imam, he had to be in close proximity to the authority of the time. We see this in Imam Rida alayhi salatu wasalam, and his position that he had within the government. Although he knew that the government itself was not observing the rights of everyone, that they were not, as he would consider, the true and absolute just government. But yet, he had a position there, and of course, as we know, historically, he was forced to go into that position. Nonetheless, he used it as an opportunity to advocate justice, to stand up for the rights of others. So social activism, when we analyze the history of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afsalatu wasalam, it took on different forms based on what was the need of the society and the need of the time. So as we, as Muslims, as followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afsalatu wasalam, as we are interested in also social activism, the first thing that we have to set as a priority is to set justice as our priority. That when we look out into society, if we see something that is wrong, something that is unjust, then that should be the focus of our activism. And we should understand that if there is a act that is unjust, why is it unjust? And what is the solution? And so when we advocate or we get involved in social activism, we should make it, bring awareness to the injustice that is happening, but also have a solution that, okay, well, what is the solution to this injustice? Because when the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam, in throughout time and in their activism within the society, not only did they speak out against the injustice, bringing awareness that, okay, this is wrong, this is unjust, these particular rulers should not do this, or they are not observing the rights of others, not helping the poor as they should. So what is the solution to that? So when we're active, we definitely need to know the solution. Another thing that we should also be very astute to is that, when we begin some sort of activism, whether it be direct activism, that we are speaking out against something, we're protesting something, we may be signing petitions about something, we should examine that action or that particular method of activism that we are getting involved in, to see that if it is the best method for that particular situation. Because if we're not using the best method of activism, then what happens is that sometimes it will actually backfire. Sometimes it will not be effective. Then you have to go back to the drawing board and think of new ways and new methods of trying to bring awareness to a particular situation, trying to correct a particular situation. One thing also that is quite important, especially for Muslims, and the concept of justice, standing up for justice, standing up for what is right, we also have to keep in mind, as I've stated before, that as a Muslim, we are obligated to stand up for justice, to stand against oppression, to help those who are oppressed. And that obligation is not limited to advocating justice and standing up for the oppressed. Is not limited to just Muslims. Oh, well, hey, this Muslim is being oppressed, and so now we have to shout, we have to scream, we have to make some sort of statement to alleviate the oppression, to stand up against those whose rights have been trampled upon. But as Muslims, that we are also to advocate justice in a very general sense, that even if a person is not Muslim, that you stand up for their rights if they are being oppressed. If you're out in the street, just to give one example, and someone's being robbed, and you have the ability to help that person, whether they're Muslim, whether they're Christian, whether even if they're Jewish, you have the ability to help the person, you're obligated as a Muslim to do that. And we see this throughout the lifetime of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam. Even there's one story where one of the students of Imam Sadiq alayhi afdalus salatu wassalam, and I believe that the student was Hisham ibn Hakam. I will have to go back I read this story about Imam Sadiq a while back. But nonetheless, the student followed Imam Sadiq out one night, because Imam Sadiq, he left from his house. It was fairly late in the evening, at a time that he thought that, well, why is Imam leaving out of his house at this time of the evening? Imam Sadiq also, he had a cloak over his head so that you could not see his face from the side. But Hisham ibn Hakam, or whichever student it was who saw him, they knew that, okay, this is his house, and that is Imam Sadiq, is his statue, everything. So he said he followed the Imam. And the Imam, he had a sack on his back. And he went to an area of Medina that was known, and the people in this area was known to oppose Imam Sadiq, and also to talk ill of Imam Sadiq. But Imam Sadiq, when he got to this area, without disclosing his identity, without taking his hood off that people could see his face and see who he was taking bread and out of his bag and giving it to the poor people in this area. Then as Imam Sadiq, he returned home, the student, as I said, perhaps Hisham ibn Kamil, he confronted the Imam. He says, Ibn Rasulullah, oh son of the Prophet, he says, why did you go to this area? And you gave these people bread. And these are people that are known to speak ill of you. These are people who are known to reject your teachings. And so why did you do this? Imam Sadiq, he replied, he says that these people are oppressed. Why? Because the ruler is not observing their rights. They have a right, haqq, to Baytul Mal, to the welfare institute within the Islamic State, and the ruler is not observing that right. And so therefore they are poor. And by doing this action, I am trying to, and I am, observing their rights, I am helping them simply for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this in itself shows that, yes, if those individuals are poor or someone is being oppressed, as a Muslim you have responsibility to do that, to stand up for their rights. Unfortunately, sometimes we, at times, we get kind of narrow-minded and think that, oh, well, we're only going to stand up for the rights of our people. Yes, that's an obligation. It's a great obligation. But to show the purity of Islam, the purity of the message of the Prophet, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states in the Quran that He sent all of His prophets. He says, لَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رُسُلَنَا. I mean, رُسُلَنَا, all prophets. With that book, with the clear explanations, with the al-mizan, with justice, لِيَقُومَ النَّاسِ بِالْقِسْطِ. It didn't say one particular person, but that mankind in general will establish justice. So if no one stands up for justice, it is your obligation as a Muslim, as followers of Ahlul Bayt, to stand up for justice. And this was the life of Ahlul Bayt. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives all of us strength and also the wisdom to know how to stand up for justice, the appropriate methods to use to stand up for justice, so that our social activism will be effective, and that we bring awareness to oppressive situations, and inshallah, hopefully correct those situations. So I'll end here with the bayan and opening up for question and answers. So, good question. Question is that if we identify a cause that needs to be advocated, how do we start? Of course, there was a kind of preliminary statement about that, is that before beginning that cause, that call for justice, we must establish justice within ourselves by fulfilling our obligations, fulfilling our duties to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is definitely true. The concept of al-jihad al-akbar, the self-purification, and then moving from self-purification to helping to purify and set things correct within society. Again, one would have to see that, examine the situation, social conditions, the readiness of people to actually advocate that if you want to take it into the streets, as you mentioned, that is it something on that scale that can be, people can get signs, take it to the streets, and something like that, it needs preparations. There's always preparation for things like that. To give you an example, like when you have individuals who are picketing or boycotting, maybe their job or something like that wants to, they're trying to cut some sort of funding for the employees. Normally what happens is a lot of those employees, they have a union. And within their union, they discuss the pros and cons of that whole situation. That, okay, can we send forth a delegation to talk with the people in charge in order to correct this situation? If that fails, they go to the next step, because there definitely sometimes there are protocols for trying to correct the situation, and we need to make sure that you follow those protocols, because in a situation like that, let's say for example, a company wanted to change the benefits that the employees get, and so right away they go and start picketing. That can have a negative effect, because they, the company can say, well, look, you should have followed the protocols. If you followed the protocols, we would have made the change. We would have perhaps negotiated something, but now with you picketing and you're not doing the work, so okay, well, you're actually at fault for not following the protocols. But if you follow the protocols, that okay, first step is that, okay, we're going to try to deal with this situation, get some sort of redress of the issue. If the company, the power bees, those who are in charge of the company, they fail to redress the situation, the union gets back together. So it's okay, well, we tried this, A, B, and C. These are the protocols to handle this. They don't want to listen. So now we move to the next step of trying to advocate the justice for the situation. And that may be to take a show of hands, okay, how many people know about this situation? How many people are being affected by the situation? They start gathering statistical information about that. And then they begin to say, okay, well, are you guys willing to go out in the streets, make picket signs, maybe even sometimes miss a couple of days of the work? And what happens is a union, quite often they have a fund also available. Okay, well, you're missing work. You still need to make money, so the union actually pays some money. That's why there's union dues. They'll give them money to help. So depending on what the situation is, how ready people are to actually stand up and to make some sort of protest, those are kind of, you could say, things which need to be managed, things which need to be worked out in detail. First of all, have we gone through proper channels of trying to redress the situation? If those proper channels have failed, and at times, sometimes you have people who are in positions of power, they want to just ignore the situation, and if no one knows about that situation, they'll cover it up. So in order to raise awareness about it, then it moves to the point of protesting, picketing. So you have to see that, you have to look into all of these issues. Proper protocols, rejection of people who are in power to redress those issues and to correct them. Then people have awareness about it. And also people are willing to stand up and to speak out against it. Because you see, that was one of the problems with Imam Hassan alayhi. Though he told the people to stand up for justice, they did not. And because they did not stand up for justice, they did not support him, they did not back him, then he was basically forced into making the peace treaty. So the question is, I guess, about first, how do we, implement this a advocacy for justice and doing what is right, without first establishing justice within our own households. And the example given is that, for example, if we go to the different majalis, or if we go to certain gatherings within our homes and see people are backbiting, people are just not observing one another's rights, And if we, if we don't stand up for those things, how can we go out and stand up for other issues of justice? It's a good question, and definitely, as we mentioned before, that yes, a person must advocate justice within his own household. One, he must observe justice, and then that will give him strength to go out and to advocate justice on a larger scale. And some activists also, they've kind of analyzed that particular situation too, that really if we are not able to, stand up for justice or speak out against injustice on kind of small issues, then you can't do it on larger issues. For example, if you cannot stand up for it in your own lives, then at a time, there will come a point when there's a greater injustice that's happening, that a person will not have the courage to actually stand up against the greater injustice, right? Because these smaller injustices has overcome him, overwhelmed him. And we get this also within the story of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu in his time, that when the people of Kufa, they wrote to Imam Hussein alayhi salatu, they said, come, we will stand with you, we will support you against Yazid, who was the overall Khalifa of the time, and he was not observing the rights of the Ummah. He was also not rightfully to be the leader, based on the treaty that was made between Imam Hassan alayhi and Muawiyah. So the Kufians at the time, they were willing to stand up against Yazid, so that hopefully, I guess, justice, at least in their mindset, so they thought justice will prevail within the Ummah. So the tactic of Yazid was that he sent Ibn Ziyad to Kufa. Ibn Ziyad, when he went to Kufa, he took over. And, that, you could look at it and you see, okay, the scale of oppression that Ibn Ziyad, made throughout Kufa was something small compared to the greater oppression and injustice that Yazid had implemented against Imam Hussein and the Ahlul Bayt. So those individuals in Kufa who capitulated to the oppression of Ibn Ziyad, they couldn't stand against Yazid. Why? Because they couldn't deal with this small scale of injustice, comparatively. Those who were able to deal with that situation, because we know historically, again, there were a few people in Kufa who continued to advocate justice, and actually they were martyred. One is Hani ibn Urwa, that he was martyred, based almost relatively around the same time that Muslim ibn Aqil was martyred. Also, after Ibn Ziyad had seized the city, seized Kufa, and he put up the blockades to try to keep people from going in and out of Kufa, Habib ibn Madahir, who was from the tribe of the Bani Asad, he was able to escape from Kufa. Also, Muslim ibn Awsaja historically said that he was also in Kufa after the Ibn Ziyad had put up the barricade. And they were able to fight their way past Ibn Ziyad's men to get out of Kufa and to join the side of Imam Hussein. But that also, again, it shows the caliber of these individuals, that not even this, smaller amount of oppression will they, capitulate to, that they will also oppose that injustice and oppose the greater injustice, which was to fight against Imam Hussein, to murder Imam Hussein and murder his family and his Ahlul Bayt. So because they didn't capitulate to that small scale, comparatively, they fought against it, then they were able to fight against the greater injustice, which was that's what Imam was saying. So the question is, in our local communities, what should people do to, I guess, get involved in social activism? How should we be involved in our communities? And why should we get involved in those different organizations within our communities, and also advocate for social activism and justice? One, I think, on a very basic scale, that as Muslims we should be involved in our communities, our community centers, our masajid, our Islamic centers if we have them, be involved in those organizations, and also to try to ensure that these organizations are running properly, from the standpoint of the the administrative staff, that they're being managed properly, they're not being abused, or they're not being kind of used improperly, because sometimes we'll find that in some places that the board, or sometimes the executive committee or directors, they are sometimes fighting among themselves, and it's just, okay, well, who has power? Who's the president? Who has control of the treasury and money? By getting involved, one should try to make sure that the Islamic etiquettes are being observed within that organization, within the managerial structure of that organization. Because it's not about, or at least it shouldn't be about, okay, who has power, who's doing this. It should be about, Islam, and observing our rights and our duties to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, following the way of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afsalatu wasalam. So by getting involved, you should advocate that justice. You're establishing justice within your own home again, That's because the center should be your home, your second home. So that's one thing that we could do on a local scale, and also to ensure that the proper teachings of the Quran, the proper teachings of the Ahkam, proper teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afsalatu wasalam are also being established within those centers. So that's another reason why we should get involved. And also to bring, awareness about social justice, to bring awareness within those communities about issues within the society that we live in. What issues are affecting you? Sometimes there are issues that are, things that are happening within the city, and they may affect the Muslim community. May affect, okay, well, how much can you, build? Can you expand your building? Can you, can you, actually, gather in a place? There's so many different things that it needs our involvement to understand how to operate in the society. The worst thing is that we, decide, okay, well, I'm going to get a building, I'm going to have programs and this and that, but we don't understand how to effectively maneuver within the society, understand what are the laws, what we can do, what we can't do. And when we don't understand these things, then we're not able to be effective in the society. When we understand that, okay, what are the laws? What can I do? What can't I do? How must I do these particular things, these particular activities? Then we can be more effective in society. Hopefully that answered your question. There are a number of questions. I think if I didn't cover one of them, then just let me know. It's a good question. The question is how should we focus our energy when we get involved in different organizations and which organization should we get involved in. The answer to that, I would say that a person should look at the principles of the organization. What are their principles? And if those principles and the teachings are in line with the principles, in line with the methodology of the Prophet and his Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afdalus wassalam, then it is a worthwhile organization to get involved with and to help that organization to move forward. Sometimes, as I guess your question included, that sometimes you may have organizations that are not completely in line with the teachings or methodologies of Ahlul Bayt. And with those sorts of organization, one has to see that, okay, well, if I can go in and to help change things, that they are doing things properly. For example, and I've heard of this, sometimes you have an organization, they're a Muslim organization, and they'll get together, they'll have just different activities, but when the time of Salat comes, no one pays attention to the Salat. Everyone is like, oh, well, we're gathering from this time to that time. Time of Salat comes in, 3 hours, 4 hours pass, Salat is in, they don't pray, then the program's over, okay, everybody goes back home and they pray. If they have time to pray, sometimes they may not. That type of thing is, is basically kind of unacceptable when you look at the standards and the principles of Ahlul Bayt. Yes, gather, have your functions, but the Salat should be a centerpiece. If you're going to meet around Salat time, then you should make sure that that Salat is going on. If we are mourning for Imam Hussein, if we believe that, yes, Imam Hussein is our Imam, that he's the savior of Islam, he's a reviver of Islam, then look at his principles. That he, in the middle of the battlefield, made the Salah. And the enemies did not stop, shooting arrows at him while they were praying. But because that was a principal issue within his movement, then if we are developing Islamic organizations and Islamic centers, that should be it should be a focus. So when we look at the principles of an organization, if we see that it is not completely in line with the ways and the methodologies of Ahlul Bayt, at that point we have to see that, okay, if I get involved with this organization, am I able to effect a change for the better? If so, get involved, try to make positive changes within that organization. If you see that, okay, well, hey, if I get involved, I'm not going to be able to make a change, you still have the responsibility of at least making those individuals who are involved aware that, look, these are the principles that you need to operate by. These are the principles of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt. So we can make them aware. We may not be physically involved with planning and organizing these type of things, because we know that that may not be the most effective way. The most effective way may be that, okay, well, I know this guy. He's a pretty good guy. Let me tell him. He's already involved. The people involved already know him. They have a history with him. And so he will be the most effective person to make a change in that organization. So we have to just balance all of those things. It's a good question. There's questions about visiting family and, how, well, I guess we could say how often should it be done, or when we go, if there's backbiting done in that environment that we are visiting family. By not going, would it cut off family ties? The ruling about the Silat al-Rahim and maintaining family ties is that a person has to, it's obligatory to maintain family ties. But you have to see that, okay, well, what is the criterion with maintaining family ties within your own family? within some families, it's okay. Well, you have to come by every week. You have to come by once a week, and that's what they feel is maintaining family ties. And if you don't, then they feel like, okay, well, what's going on? You're breaking off from us. You're separating from us. Yeah, for some families, okay, if you come by once a month, that's maintaining family ties. They say, okay, well, we know you're busy and this and that. So you have to look at what is the kind of order for what is the common perception of maintaining family ties within one's family, and then try one's best to maintain that. Now, when going around family, if they're doing things which are inappropriate, backbiting or other things, you have an obligation also to enjoin them to that which is right, to let them know that this is not good. And if it's forbidden, if it's haram, you let them know that it's haram. And also, let them know that, look, this is, it could be creating, kind of difficulty for me to come and to maintain family ties because you're doing this thing and I don't want to be around it. So could you please abstain from this? Abstain from it also while I'm here, while I'm in your presence, because it's not appropriate. So you have that duty also. It's kind of a double duty to enjoying what is right, but also maintain family ties. And inshallah, hopefully, if a person has right intentions, and to be a positive role model for their family, inshallah, slowly but surely they'll leave those things which are not appropriate. It's a good question. Do you need a certain level of knowledge before getting involved in Islamic work? Well, a person, who's involved in Islamic work and Islamic organizations, they operate to the extent of their knowledge and the extent of their know-how, and do not act beyond that. Again, sometimes there are some organizations, and sometimes some people they establish functions, organizations, centers sometimes, and the most unfortunate thing is that, and I've seen this sometimes, that people who have not really studied properly in Hausa or studied properly under any Islamic authority and learned Islamic studies properly, they will take on this kind of status as a scholar or as a person who knows. And that is very, very, I would say, dangerous, and it's because it will take people in a different direction, and they will not be fulfilling their duties. And this is the thing that we learn from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wasalam. If we say that, okay, we follow Ahlul Bayt, one of the first things that we advocate as Muslims, as followers of Ahlul Bayt, we say, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. That if you don't know anything, then you follow those who know. But unfortunately, sometimes some individuals put themselves forward as if they know. And personally, I've come across a couple of situations where I've gone into communities to speak, and then I am asked certain questions, and this is because those same individuals, they asked questions from someone else who really did not learn in Hausa and was not really grounded in their knowledge. And I guess the individual maybe had some doubt or something like that, and then when I give them the answer, then they're like, well, we heard it was something else. But what they heard prior to that was actually wrong. And I made it clear for the individual. I showed them the book, the Book of Islamic Law. So here's where it says, I'm not just telling you for myself. Here's what the Marja says. Here's the ruling. And what they had been told before, the person never showed them anything. They just said, well, this is the answer. This is what you follow by. So, if we get involved in Islamic organizations, we should be humble enough to be involved with the knowledge that we have. If we know something, then hey, put it in the service for the Islamic organization. If we don't know, then we seek the answer from those who do know. And inshallah, as we also work and involve ourselves in Islamic activity, hopefully also we learn more, and that should be our objective also. As we are getting involved, we also learn more about our deen, and so that we can contribute more to those organizations. The question is, if we know that a company is engaged in bad business, should we continue to shop there, knowing that that company perhaps is involved in some sort of social injustice? The thing is that yes, if you can avoid shopping at such places, then you avoid it. If you have alternatives, then go to the alternative. That's perhaps a wise way to look at it and to operate. I have an alternative, I'll go to the alternative. Yeah, so it was a good question, long question. The question is that what do the youth do as individuals who want to get involved in some of the Islamic centers, get involved in Islamic activities, but their parents are telling them that it is, they shouldn't do it. It's, they are not going to have time for their studies, but then their parents are pushing them to get involved in activities on campus, the different things on campus, but not advocating to them or not encouraging them to get involved in Islamic work. Well, I guess this is an issue that the parents and children, they should work out, and it should be done with within reason. That if they don't have time to, if getting involved in Islamic studies is going to hinder them from their studies, then likewise getting involved in the campus organizations will also hinder. But if so that's not logical. If you say one thing is going to affect and the other thing is not going to affect, you're going to put the same amount of time in it. But what one could do is to look at the different ways of being involved in different organizations. Now, the more you're involved with the administration of different organizations, that takes a lot of time. To be like the president of an organization, to be the treasurer of an organization, to be a vice president of an organization, because you're managing a lot of stuff within that organization. And if you're just like one of the volunteers, you can probably volunteer for, I'll volunteer for an hour, or I could be here at that time. And in that way, a person can balance his or her studies and getting involved in this Islamic organization, which is good, which parents should encourage their children to be involved in Islamic organizations, to be involved in the Islamic community, because it helps them to, it helps strengthen the community at large, and it also helps to fortify that person's deen. And if one sees that, I can be involved also in the campus organization, like I'll volunteer an hour there, volunteer an hour here. I won't be part of the administrative structure where it's going to take a lot of my time. So those things can be worked out, but it takes, again, a person managing his or her time so that they can focus their efforts on getting things done. Because the reality of life is that you're always multitasking. You're doing this thing, you're doing that thing, and it all takes skills of managing one's affairs and managing one's time. Inshallah, inshallah. So the very good question. The question is that now the brother has read that in the time that Imam Zaman Ajal Sharif, he reappears. Many of the people who claim to be Shia, they will actually abandon the Imam. So what can we do as far as in the means of social activism to ensure that we ourselves would not be among those individuals who abandoned the Imam of our time, Ajjalallahu Tafarruj Sharif, in the end of times? The things that we can do, as we've kind of been mentioning so far, is that we improve our own deen, our faith, our understanding of Islam, our understanding of the Quran, our understanding of the way of Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afdal salatu wasalam. And we, first and foremost, establish justice within ourselves. And that justice is meaning that we are doing the things that we should do. We're observing the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're observing the rights of our brothers, sisters, family, wives, husband, children. We are observing all of these rights and not only claiming to be a Shia, a follower of Ahlul Bayt, but to be a real Shia of Ahlul Bayt. And this is also why, again, we commemorate the martyrdom of Imam Hussein. It's there's so many lessons in it. Some people who claim that they would stand for justice, they didn't stand for justice. And that's why, when we look at the historical facts, there were thousands upon thousands of people who wrote to Imam Hussein, says, "Come to Kufa, we will back you, we will stand with you." But when he came, most of everyone abandoned him. Only a handful of people remained with Imam Hussein. And this is a great lesson to us, especially with regards to our Imam, that when we see, who stood with Imam Hussein, who were these people, and what were these people like? Those are the same people who did not sacrifice their principles of justice. They did not sacrifice their principles of being devoted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was the middle of the battlefield, we're going to pray. We're going to pray with Imam Hussein. Okay, hey, we've been offered, tons of money just to leave Imam Hussein. No, I don't want it. My principle is the principle of justice, even if I have to give my life. So if we are those who learn that lesson and we are able to implement that lesson within our lives, then inshallah we will be the helpers of Imam Zaman. We will be those who do not abandon the Imam of our time.